Welcome back to Range Anxiety TV, and this is our Christmas special. Well, not really, because it's not going to be Christmas when you see this, and we ain't going to be producing much over that little break because I need a holiday. I work very hard, as everybody that knows me would be more than happy to tell you. But today, we're going to have a look at Ford's Christmas present to y'all, and I think just like the kid that they show getting the little Lego box AI picture of the burning Tesla, crying, I think that's what you're going to be like once you hear all about this. So we thought that the BYD SHARK would actually have a competitor with the new Ranger Phev plug-in hybrid electric vehicle being released to market in 2025. Now, this has been a long time coming. It's been gestating in the belly of Ford Thailand for about 3 years. And finally, we're told we're going to have this Ranger in 2025, right as the novated lease tax credit runs out for hybrid electric vehicles. So that's a bit of an unfortunate move, but while the Shark is just sitting there getting thousands of orders, all at like $7,000 or $8,000 off due to novated leasing. So that's not the most disappointing thing about the Ranger. Let's just have a look at the raw specs. Now, every other YouTuber's done this to death already. I like to be a little bit original with the way I present things, but we still need to have a look at the specs. Right, we'll do this quickly. Seal, see, I even got it. I was that excited. All this seafood, BYD, Chinese things, seafood, wet market cars. Oh, got me thinking now. Anyway, the Shark has a 30 kilowatt hour battery, the same size as a second gen Nissan Leaf. The Ranger has an 11 kilowatt hour battery, which is about the same size as a Maglite torch. The Shark can produce 320 kilowatts or so through its electric motors, or 290 or something crazy, like, I don't know, whatever, something like that. The Ford, I don't have to be too accurate with the BYD numbers here, but the Ford makes 75 kilowatts or 100 horsepower in the old money through its electric motor. So as you can see, it's not really the same thing. We're comparing apples and oranges here. The Ford will do 44 kilometers pure electric range out of that tiny little Duracell, whereas the BYD will allegedly go 100, as it should. So then we're not really looking at the same thing here. And, you know, it would, because I'm a purist on these things, you know, scratch my nose, have a think about it. I would more like the BYD scheme of things, because it's like an EV with a petrol motor, where the Ranger, and people love Rangers and people will buy these things anyway, whether I like them or not, is a petrol car with a little EV helper motor. So they're two very different things, right? One has a trans tunnel, one doesn't. And it's the design where they differ, because the Ranger is based on a 14-year-old, 15-year-old design, a conventional pressed floor pan, tail shaft, so on, you know, trans tunnel. We'll get onto that in a minute. Whereas the BYD is a clean sheet, proper EV ute with a petrol generator. So the ideology of the two vehicles is very, very far apart. However, you know, people will say they're both Phevs, they're both in the same market, but in reality, they're kind of nothing alike. Like, for example, let's go back to it, and the videographer will put up some pictures here. The BYD is electric motor front and rear, big battery pack or biggish battery pack, and a petrol motor that acts as a genset that can then kick in and drive the front wheels under high demand. Conversely, the Ranger is just like any other Ranger, where it has a big lump of a motor up the front, in this case, the 2.3 litre EcoBoost, which you would, 4-cylinder slugger that you would know out of the 4-cylinder Falcon, and hasn't that been quite the success for Ford Australia? Yeah, like the Commodore 4. You didn't do your research, did you guys? It's got the 2.3 litre 4-cylinder petrol motor. It's got a 10-speed automatic transmission, you know, a nice big unreliable trans. It's got a tail shaft. It's got diffs. It's got drive shafts. It's got everything with a little sandwich plate electric motor that goes between the engine and the transmission that decouples the engine and switches it off when there's enough power left in the battery, which is about the same size as my sexy knob box. Yeah, more on that later. Don't think to, just Google it, right? It's clean. And yeah, so they're totally different things. So we're looking at an electric powerhouse in the case of the BYD versus like a warmed over petrolish kind of thing with a bit of help in the middle in the case of the Ranger. Now, this isn't going to upset Ranger buyers because Ranger buyers are special folk. They're buying the Aussie engineered, Aussie built, Aussie icon, biggest selling car in Australia, made in Bangkok Ute. And they'll continue to buy their Fords. And then there might be lease fleet deals where they're Ford affiliated and so on. But anyone that is looking at this from a purely technical point of view is going to see that the Ford is a pessimistic effort, let's say at best, from an engineering viewpoint. And then, of course, there is the alleged pricing. And pricing is going to be the real crunch here. Because let's just say you could put up with the specs of each and, yeah, you know, whatever, it's going to be all right. And don't think for a minute the Ranger is going to be as fast as the Shark. If acceleration is your bag, baby, then no, because the Shark's faster than the Raptor. And if the Ranger Phev was faster than the Raptor, who would buy the Raptor? I mean, it sounds awful, but it's a big profit car for Ford, and there's no way they want their Phev to be faster than their Raptor, the VS V6 single pegger sounding thing that it is. And the crunch will be is that while the BYD is eligible for the novated lease up until April deals where you drive away, they'll be 50 odd grand if you do it properly. You've got to factor in, and although there's no official pricing yet, Ford aren't going to be able to get anywhere near that unless they want to lose big dollars per vehicle, which they can't afford to do. So you're going to be looking at this Ranger Phev in any kind of trim spec that can match the Shark being $30,000 to $40,000 dearer, like 70 to 80% dearer than the Shark on a deal. So that is a lot of money. You can buy a lot of anything for that amount of money. You can have a good time at the Monaco Grand Prix if that's the sort of thing you fancy. So the Ranger's going to be blown out of the water in that regard price-wise. I can guarantee you that. I'm going to read my notes. So there will be diehards that buy them, but don't expect too much from it. It's not going to be a fantastic thing, I don't think. Surprise me, Ford Australia. And, you know, like I said, people will buy it, they'll accessorate it, it can tow 3.5 tonne and the Shark can't. Who wants to tow 3.5 tonne behind a bloody little ute anyway? You'd have to have rocks in your head. I've tried it. It's not comfortable. 2 to 2.5 is about where it's at. And the other thing they're not taking into consideration here, because the Range is going to be that heavy, and it will be heavy, trust me, it'll be heavy. You're not going to be able to put much in it anyway or load it up too much before it's over its GCM. So the whole thing, in my opinion, is a bit of a waste of time. So why are Ford even bothering to do it? Well, they're bothering to do it because they have to. They have to meet our new vehicle emission standards that come in next year or have something in their fleet that isn't a dirty carbon dioxide belching bloody behemoth. And let's have a look at the moment. Diesel Ranger, petrol Ranger, diesel Everest, petrol Mustang. There's nothing that is clean in any way in their lineup. So they're going to be taxed heavily unless they can sell these things or at least offer them and get some nut runs on the board. So would I buy a Ranger Phev? Look, I don't know all of the info yet, but from what I've seen versus the Shark, absolutely no bloody way. You know, I could buy nearly 2 Sharks, a his and a hers, for what you can get one Phev Ranger for. Who would do it? That's a question. So we're not going to know till mid next year when the things lob and when the dealers start kicking them out the door. But if you're thinking about it over the Christmas break, you can say, oh, you know, Martin's just a miserable, grumpy old man. But facts talk. And we're talking on one hand, engineering elegance from BYD. Yes, I said that. Engineering elegance from a Chinese supplier, a car manufacturer and vehicle designer versus a Band-Aid approach on an old rickshaw chassis from Ford. And remember, it's not Ford, like Ford as an Aussie icon. It's a Bangkok car versus a China car. And like I said before, fried rice or pad si woo. It's up to you. Pad thai, sorry. And yeah, think about it over the Christmas break. Thanks for subscribing this year. If you want to tell me I'm stupid, go ahead and do so below, and I will come back to you and argue with you online if it makes you feel better. I'm very good at that. And thank you once more for watching Range Anxiety TV.